Welcome to SGN Tech Forum. Today in this video, we are going to introduce or unveil a new Cisco product called Cisco Telemetry Broker. We will look at two use cases, and before that we dwell into that, let's understand our agenda. So first we'll have the introduction of the product. Next we are going to talk about installation process, and here we are going to talk about VMware based installation process. Then I'll give you a demo, and finally we will come back to the second case, which is related to the cloud. So if you're a cloud customer and you are familiar with running a VPC, then I'll show you how CTB can help you with your cloud VPC logs. All right. So let's first introduce ourselves with Cisco Telemetry Broker. Cisco's Telemetry Broker or CTB allow you to ingest network telemetry from many sources, transform that data format and forward that telemetry to one or multiple destination. So if you're a Cisco secure customer, maybe this rings a bell. This is something similar to UDP Director, which was part of StealthWatch portfolio. Just like UDPD or UDP Director, CTB is also a Netflow aggregator. Not just Netflow aggregator, but it can also work with Syslog and IPFIX. Right, but it is not exactly one-to-one replacement of UDP Director. Please keep that in mind. Why? Because it addresses advanced use cases, which we are going to discuss in second part when we will talk about AWS VPC flow logs. Right. So let's talk about the ingested data format. You can ingest data in terms of like Netflow. So forward data will be Netflow only. You can also send syslog and forward it as a syslog. But what is interesting here is if you are a AWS customer or a cloud customer, you will have something called VPC log or network security group log, NSG logs. CTB can help you convert these logs into IPFIX so that you can use your existing Netflow collectors or any kind of like Netflow cruncher you are using within your network, say live action. It can convert the cloud logs to something familiar, which is IPFIX, so that you can use your existing collector to parse that data. All right. So now look at the solution high level overview, right, where the CTB fits into picture. So this is the generic example. You have on the very bottom, you have your network devices or maybe your cloud services from where you are ingesting VPC logs or a syslog or Netflow, right? So you may have multiple devices here. You point the telemetry data to Cisco Telemetry Broker, and Cisco Telemetry Broker in turn can aggregate everything and send it to multiple destination. Here in this case, I have StealthWatch as an illustration, but you can send it to any Netflow collectors, right? Maybe live action. Okay, now let's understand the CTB architecture. CTB consists of two components, CTB manager and brokers. Brokers are main node who's responsible for doing all the work. However, CTB manager give you a web interface which where you can perform your configuration task, and you can manage your broker, you can set up forwarding rules, create users, review your dashboard uses, and also create your broker high availability. So you can make two broker work as a combined one. And as you can see in the picture, two brokers can form a cluster, and then you can assign a virtual IP address to your cluster node so that all the network devices, they can send the Netflow data to telemetry VIP. In case one broker goes down, the other broker can still keep on receiving the data. So this is the high level architecture, right? Okay, so now you are familiar with the CTB architecture and the use case. If you are willing to deploy this, how you're going to deploy this, we are going to talk about that in next section. But please remember, here as you can see, if you are planning to deploy something like this, then you need to plan your network beforehand. So what do you need? You need management network. That is a network which make CTB manager, broker and node communicate with each other. And then you have the telemetry network, and telemetry network will be used by network devices to send the data. Okay, for management network, you need to have these details: IPv4 address, mask, default gateway, and obviously name server. For telemetry networks, similar things. So for telemetry NIC, you will have two NIC on your broker, one for management, one for telemetry. Telemetry NIC, you will need all your IPv4 detail. At the same time, telemetry NIC supports IPv6 address families as well. All right, some basic hardware requirement. Obviously, you are going to run the virtual form factor, but still you need the resources, right? And these things are pretty dynamic, so I always highly encourage you to go and look at the Cisco documentation, verify what version you want to install and what are the hardware config resource requirement. But just for sake of illustration, as you can see, for manager node, for broker node, what I need 4 CPU, 8 GB, 80 GB of storage, and then you need multiple NICs and different bandwidth, like 1 GB or 10 GB, right? Okay, now let's talk about the installation. So when we want to install, first we will install the manager node, and for that, what you have to do, you have to download the software. Obviously, go to software.cisco.com. If you are a licensed customer, you have privilege to license or download the OVA. Download the OVA version of CTB Manager. Simply deploy it on your VMware ESXi, right? Once you deploy and power on the VM, you will have the web console, right? And within the web console, you have to just log in with username install, no password required. Once you are in the config prompt, just run sudo CTB install, and it will initiate a workflow, right? It will initiate the initial configuration. What you have to do, you have to just apply the IP address, subnet mask, and other information which we captured above in above table, right? Once you put everything and save, you're done. Your CTB manager is installed, and now you can simply go to HTTPS and the IP address. You will have the web UI available. All right. What you have, one thing what you have to notice that while you install, you are setting up a username and password, right? So first you entered install without any password, but then you have to set an admin password. So for a web VM console, you will have an admin username and a password. But when you come to web UI, you also have to create another user. So VM console admin is different, and the web you need to create something. I would say create a web admin probably and set the password. Right now, so our manager is available. Now we need brokers, right? For brokers, we are going to do similar step. First, download the OVA and then deploy it on AE6i, power on the VM, and from web console, again, say install without any password. Once you are in config prompt, say sudo CTB install, follow the prompt, assign the IP addresses of the telemetry NIC. Once you do that, what you have to connect this broker to the manager, right? And for that, what you need, sudo CTB manage command. Basically, when you do sudo CTB, it will ask you who's your manager, what is the username and password for that. Once you supply that, it will try to connect to the manager, and once you are authenticated, you will become part of the CTB manager, right? So we'll take a pause here, and now we'll go back to a CTB, and I'm going to show you a demo, basically how it looks like, right? Once you install and you use your web admin and password, you will be launched in this dashboard kind of page where you can see telemetry broker. We have a couple of tabs: overview, destination, sources, broker node, manager node, integration, right? So basically overview is self-explanatory. Here you can see how many sources you have, how many data you are sending and receiving. Destination, how your destinations are doing. If any of the destinations are not reachable, you can see the count here. So I have 2 destinations and I have 33 sources right now. Okay. These are my broker nodes. As you can see, I formed a cluster out of them, right? Then some CPU uses. So my manager, how my manager node is doing, how my brokers are doing, and everything. And obviously CTB, you have to license it, right? So if you are a Cisco customer, you can just simply order a license in your smart account. So if you're not familiar with smart account, watch my smart account videos. This is the all flow information. So right now I have 2 kind of flows getting aggregated. One is Netflow, and another is obviously the VPC flow logs, which is coming from AWS cloud, right? So you can see all the details here. Finally, matrices, receive rate, send rate, and if you notice, the graph looks exactly same. So CTB, whatever it is receiving, it just sent out, right, to various destination. The benefit is you have only single stream of data coming in within your network, right? So if you have thousands of network devices, they're all sending it to just one location or one destination, and from there you can send it to multiple destinations, so it drastically or dramatically reduce your network traffic, right? So this is all about overview page. Then what you can do, you can actually go to hmm, destination and create destination. It's as simple as that. That's just go to the destination, say add destination, and this put your destination IP address and the port number, right? Then sources, you can create source, then you can specify subnet, that these are the subnet I am interested to receive data. If you leave it blank, that means it's all allow all, so anyone can send Netflow or traffic to CTB, because it keeps on listening on certain ports, right? Then finally broker node, not finally, but yes, broker node. So here, as brokers join the manager, you'll see those nodes listed here, and then if you want, you can add a cluster, and anytime you can delete a cluster as well. If any broker node goes inactive or unconfigured something, you can see all the details here. Finally, manager node is all about the resource utilization, how your manager is doing in terms of memory, disk storage, and other things. All these matrices are available here. And then you have integration. Integration is a place where you actually, when you want to integrate with cloud, say AWS and Azure, those are the two supported right now. So you go to integration and do that part. But I'm going to show you as a screenshot. Okay. So this is all about CTB web interface and how it works, right? And I hope you are now familiar and probably excited to deploy one in your network. All right. So now let's go back and talk about the second part. Second part is what? So now my network devices, they were capable of generating syslog, Netflow. But if you are a cloud user, right, then definitely you have a VPC for yourself. And then you can enable VPC flow logs. That means, what is VPC flow log? Anything coming or outgoing, incoming or outgoing from your VPC, that information you can log, and you can use that information for auditing and security analysis and other purposes, right? So the VPC flow logs is very useful, but they are generally in, like, none of the cloud has some standard format for the VPC flow logs. Every cloud provider is doing it differently, so it's very hard to analyze that data or streamline that data. Here comes CTB in picture, and when I show you one picture how we convert the flow log to IPFIX, you are going to really appreciate that, right? And that make the VPC flow log very meaningful. It convert it in something meaningful, so that you can use your existing integrations or existing tools and parse this data. Okay, but to put that integration in place, you have to perform a few steps on your VPC side, at the same time on your CTB side. So we'll look at like both sides of the work. Okay, what we can do here. All right, let's read this statement. You can configure your AWS deployment to export VPC flow logs to Cisco Telemetry Broker. Then configure Cisco Telemetry Broker to transform the VPC flow log to IPFIX, which is a standard Netflow standardization for ingestion by destination. Okay. So AWS side of work, what you have to do, you have to create a VPC flow log. Obviously, you have to enable the VPC flow logs. Once you enable your VPC flow log, then send this to a S3 bucket, right, as an object, which is an object storage. Now, you have to create an IAM user and download the key and the secret for the user, right? This will be uploaded to CTB. So we will use this user, we will make this user, configure this user in CTB, and CTB in turn will use this user information to reach out to AWS cloud and read from S3 bucket. right? So you have to create a IAM user and have its access keys and secret ready so that you can upload it to CTB. Okay. Now, what you have to do on CTB side of, bring this credentials back to CTB, go to integration and say add AWS credentials. Then simply create the user, put the credentials there. In CTB sources, if you go to CTB sources, then you will see VPC flow log. That's where you are going to work with VPCs, right? Add a flow, just like add a destination, you say add a flow. And within that, you have to specify a few things like what is your S3 bucket path, what AWS region is your VPC is, and select the saved credentials. I'll show you that in a screenshot here. Okay. But finally, you have user, you have path, but AWS is very policy oriented or permission based, right? So this newly created user should have a permission excuse me, to read those logs. So for that what you have to do, you have to create a policy. So go to AWS console, IAM policy, create a policy, and copy that policy from CTB. So here is the screenshot. What you have to do, you are here in AWS, go to user, create a user. Created a user called CTB at AWS, assign it to a group because you can only apply policies to a group, right? So assign it to a group called CTB group. Within that, you have to assign two policies. One is Amazon S3 read-only access. This is a predefined policy available within AWS itself. So it gives basically the read-only access for S3 bucket. And then you have a CTB policy, which you are going to get during CTB add flow integration. Okay, so you just have to copy that and create this policy. Once you created the user and prioritize the policy, come back to CTB again, as I mentioned. So go to CTB sources, add VPC flow log, source name, right? Now here we are bringing back information about CTB. So you are creating a VPC flow log source. Put the S3 bucket path, what is your region, and the credentials you created. Okay. Finally, you have to say, give some source name. You can choose anything. Source IP. Please make sure that you have to put a source IP, though it is coming from AWS VPC cloud, right? But VPC doesn't have one particular IP, right? VPC just have a subnet, and within the subnet you have multiple EC2 or maybe other databases and other things running, right? So what you can do, you can either choose one of those IP addresses or pick something arbitrary because this IP address will represent your all the VPC flow logs. Okay, so when you see this IP addresses, that means you know that this is coming from my VPC. So it's basically proxying your VPC, and obviously assign it to a broker. Then choose where you want to send, to which broker node you want to send the VPC flow log, and you select your broker node. Okay. Now this is the secret sauce. That what happened, as I mentioned, that VPC flow logs are the text file, and every provider has their own format. This is a snapshot of how AWS is doing that. So if you open your VPC flow log, you will see something like this. So these are the headers, your version, account ID, interface ID, and all those things. What Cisco is doing, Cisco is looking at these headers, header tag, and then transform that into IPFIX field, right? So that you can actually send it to maybe SecureX. So this is the secret sauce. Please keep that in mind. Once you have integration in place, you will see all your VPC flow logs. They'll look something like that. So it is coming from the source IP address, what you mentioned, and it is going to the CTB collector, because this is my CTB IP address. And as you can see, I expand, you can see all the flow parameters here. Finally, if you want to cross check, you can actually go to your stealth watch and find for that flow. As you can see, I'm getting a, since I SSH to my VPC, I can see that log here coming into SecureX. Okay, so this is all I wanted to show you about CTB, and if you want to learn more about it, please do comment in a comment section below, and if I get enough interest, I'll definitely do a second part of the CTB video. So thank you for watching.